I'm excited to welcome you to my channel. Before I dive into my story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is the story of how buying a high-end fishing kayak transformed my fishing experience. It opened up new possibilities, led me to catch the biggest fish of my life, and reignited my passion for the sport. With the freedom to explore new waters and access hidden spots, I've discovered a whole new world of adventure on the water, making the investment more than worth it. The idea of buying an angling kayak had been floating around in my mind for months, maybe even years. As an avid fisherman, I had always been content casting my line from the shore, wading in shallow waters, or occasionally renting a small boat to get a bit further out. But the more I fished, the more I realized that I was missing out on something. Every time I watched fellow anglers glide effortlessly across the lake in their kayaks, reaching those untouched, promising spots, I felt a pang of envy. They had access to parts of the water that I could only dream of, hidden coves, weed beds, and drop-offs where the big fish lurked. I began to see the limitations of my shore-bound fishing trips, and the allure of a kayak started to grow stronger. The thought process was a mix of practicality and passion. On one hand, I knew that a kayak would open up new fishing opportunities for me. I would no longer be confined to the shore, where the competition was fierce, and the fish were often spooked or scarce. With a kayak, I could explore the entire lake, river, or even coastal waters. I could get up close to the spots where the fish were biting, where few other anglers could reach. The prospect of increasing my chances of landing bigger, better fish was a significant factor in my decision-making process. But there was also the matter of cost. A high-quality angling kayak isn't cheap, and the model I had my eye on was a serious investment, $8.90 for the kayak, plus additional costs for the necessary accessories. It was a lot of money to spend on a single piece of equipment, and I found myself hesitating, questioning whether it was worth it. I thought about the expenses, other fishing gear, maintenance, transportation. Was I really ready to commit to something this big? Despite these concerns, the more I researched, the more I was convinced that this wasn't just an impulse buy. I read countless reviews, watched videos, and compared different models. The kayak I wanted was specifically designed for angling, with features like built-in rod holders, a stable, flat platform for standing and casting, ample storage for gear, and a comfortable seat for long days on the water. It was clear that this wasn't just a regular kayak, it was a tool that could transform my fishing experience, turning ordinary trips into extraordinary adventures. What finally pushed me to make the purchase was a combination of passion and practicality. I realized that fishing wasn't just a hobby for me, it was a way to unwind, to connect with nature, and to challenge myself. The thought of being able to explore new waters, to reach places I'd never been able to fish before, and to potentially catch the biggest fish of my life was too exciting to ignore. I knew that this kayak would be more than just a piece of equipment, it would be an investment in my passion, in the quality of my fishing experiences, and ultimately, in my happiness. So, with a mix of excitement and a few lingering doubts, I finally placed the order. As I clicked the confirm purchase button, a wave of anticipation washed over me. I knew that this was the start of something new, something that would take my love for fishing to the next level. The kayak was on its way, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. The day my kayak arrived felt like a long-awaited holiday. I had been tracking the shipment for days, eagerly checking updates to see when it would arrive. When the delivery truck finally pulled up in front of my house, my heart raced with excitement. Seeing the large package being unloaded from the truck made the whole thing real. This was the moment I had been waiting for. My fishing future was sitting right there on my driveway, wrapped in cardboard and packing tape. As I carefully cut open the box, I felt a mix of emotions. There was the excitement of finally seeing the kayak in person, but also a bit of nervousness. Had I made the right choice? Would it live up to my expectations? As the last of the packing material fell away and the kayak was revealed, all those doubts disappeared. There it was, in all its glory, sleek, streamlined, and ready for the water. The kayak was even more impressive in person than it had been in the photos. Its deep blue color gleamed in the sunlight, and the contours of the hull promised both stability and speed. I could already picture myself gliding across the lake, casting my line into those hard-to-reach spots. The first thing that struck me was the build quality. This wasn't just any kayak, it was built for angling, and every detail reflected that. The hull was rugged and sturdy, designed to handle everything from calm lakes to choppier coastal waters. The bottom was flat and wide, providing the stability I needed to stand and cast without worrying about tipping over. The material felt durable yet lightweight, making it easy to transport but tough enough to withstand the rigors of fishing. Next, I turned my attention to the features that had made me fall in love with this kayak in the first place. The integrated rod holders were perfectly positioned within arm's reach, allowing me to set up multiple rods for different types of fishing without cluttering the cockpit. There was ample storage, with compartments for everything from tackle boxes to extra gear. The rear storage area was especially spacious, designed to hold a cooler or a large crate, perfect for those long days on the water when I'd need food, drinks, and plenty of space for my catches. The bungee cords on the front and rear decks were strategically placed to secure anything that didn't fit in the compartments. The seat was another highlight. It wasn't just a basic plastic bench like on some kayaks. This was a comfortable, padded seat with an adjustable backrest, designed for long fishing sessions. As I tested it out, I was pleased to find that it provided excellent lumbar support and could be adjusted to different heights, allowing me to either sit low for stability or higher up for better visibility and ease of casting. It was clear that this kayak was made for someone who took their fishing seriously, someone who wanted to spend hours on the water without discomfort. Once I had everything unboxed and laid out, it was time to start the setup process. I had done my research and watched plenty of tutorials, so I knew what needed to be done. Still, there was something deeply satisfying about actually putting it all together with my own hands. I started by attaching the rod holders, making sure they were secure and positioned just the way I liked them. Next, I installed the anchor system, a crucial feature for keeping the kayak in place while I fished. This required some careful work, as I needed to ensure that the ropes and pulleys were set up correctly for easy deployment and retrieval from the seat. As I worked, I found myself adding a few personal touches, small things that would make the kayak feel truly mine. I mounted a GoPro holder near the bow, ready to capture those epic fishing moments that I'd want to relive later. I also added some reflective decals to the sides for added visibility during early morning or late evening trips. Finally, I secured a small cooler in the rear storage area, along with my tackle box and a dry bag for my phone and other essentials. When everything was in place, I stepped back to admire my work. The kayak was ready, fully rigged and customized to fit my style of fishing. It felt like a project completed, a vision brought to life. I ran my hand along the sleek surface, feeling a surge of pride. This wasn't just a piece of equipment. It was an extension of myself, a tool that would help me unlock new adventures on the water. Standing there, looking at the kayak in all its glory, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. I had taken the plunge, made the investment, and now I had something truly special to show for it. The doubts I'd had about spending so much money vanished. This kayak was worth every penny, and I hadn't even taken it out on the water yet. The excitement I felt was almost overwhelming. Tomorrow, I would launch this beauty for the first time and see what it could do. But for now, I was content to simply stand there, taking it all in and imagining the adventures that awaited. The morning of my first launch felt like a new beginning. I woke up before the sun, too excited to sleep any longer, and quickly gathered my gear. The kayak had been waiting in my garage, fully rigged and ready to go, and today was the day I would finally see what it could do. The sky was still dark as I strapped the kayak onto the roof of my car, but there was a promise of clear skies in the pre-dawn air. The drive to the lake was quiet, the roads empty, as if the world itself was giving me space to savor this moment. When I arrived at the lake, the first light of dawn was just beginning to touch the horizon, casting a soft glow over the water. The air was crisp, with a slight chill that hinted at the last remnants of night. I could see a thin layer of mist hovering over the surface of the lake, adding to the serene atmosphere. It was the perfect setting for a maiden voyage. My heart was pounding with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation as I unloaded the kayak and carried it down to the water's edge. The lake was still, a mirror reflecting the hues of the waking sky, and I couldn't wait to break its surface. I took a moment to breathe it all in, the quiet of the early morning, the sight of the water stretching out before me, and the feeling of anticipation that came with knowing I was about to embark on a new adventure. The kayak sat on the shore, looking sleek and ready, its deep blue hull contrasting beautifully with the natural surroundings. I ran my hand along the side of the kayak one last time before gently pushing it into the water. It floated effortlessly, bobbing slightly as the small waves lapped against it, waiting for me to take the plunge. With a deep breath, I stepped into the kayak, feeling it stabilize beneath me as I settled into the seat. The first thing I noticed was the comfort. It was like sitting in a well-cushioned chair, supportive and secure. As I adjusted the footrests and made sure everything was within reach, I felt a surge of confidence. This was no ordinary kayak. This was a finely tuned fishing machine, and I was ready to put it to the test. I picked up the paddle, feeling its lightness and balance in my hands, and with a few smooth strokes, I was gliding away from the shore. The first sensation of being out on the water was exhilarating. The kayak cut through the lake with surprising ease, the paddle dipping silently into the water and propelling me forward with minimal effort. It felt like I was flying, the shoreline quickly receding behind me as I ventured further out into the open water. The stability of the kayak was immediately apparent. Even as I shifted my weight to look around or reach for my gear, it remained rock solid beneath me, a reassuring platform that gave me the confidence to explore without fear of tipping over. As I paddled out, I couldn't help but marvel at how different everything looked from this new perspective. The familiar lake, which I had fished from the shore countless times, seemed almost unfamiliar now, as if I was seeing it for the first time. From the middle of the lake, I could take in the full expanse of the water, the distant trees lining the shore, and the subtle contours of the landscape that had been hidden from view before. I could see potential fishing spots that I had never been able to reach, areas with submerged logs, patches of lily pads, and shadowy coves that promised a bounty of fish. The kayak was incredibly responsive, turning easily with each stroke of the paddle, allowing me to maneuver with precision. I tested its speed, picking up the pace to see how quickly I could move across the water. It was fast, gliding effortlessly, yet it never felt unstable. The more I paddled, the more I realized just how much freedom this kayak afforded me. I wasn't limited by where the shoreline happened to be or how far I could cast. I could go anywhere, reach any spot, and that realization filled me with a sense of limitless possibility. As I approached the far side of the lake, I decided to test the kayak's stability by standing up. Carefully, I placed the paddle across my lap and shifted my weight forward, rising slowly from the seat. The kayak remained steady, barely rocking as I stood up and looked around. The elevated vantage point gave me an even better view of the water, and I could easily see fish swimming below the surface. It was like being on my own private fishing platform, and I knew that this added height would give me a significant advantage when casting into tight spots or spotting fish in clear water. Satisfied with the stability test, I sat back down and let the kayak drift for a moment, taking in the silence and the beauty of the early morning. The sun was now fully above the horizon, casting a warm golden light across the lake and slowly burning off the last of the morning mist. I could hear the distant call of birds waking up, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, and the occasional splash of fish breaking the surface. There was a peacefulness to the moment, a sense of connection to the water and the world around me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, I reached the spot I had been aiming for, a small, secluded cove on the far side of the lake, where I knew the fish liked to hide among the submerged rocks and fallen branches. This was a place I had only ever dreamed of reaching from the shore, but now, thanks to the kayak, it was within easy reach. I anchored the kayak, feeling a surge of anticipation as I prepared to cast my line for the first time from this new vantage point. As I cast my line and watched the lure disappear into the water, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. This was everything I had hoped for and more. The kayak had already proven to be worth the investment, and I hadn't even caught anything yet. Just being out here, with the freedom to explore and fish wherever I wanted, was worth every penny. I knew that this was the start of something special, a new chapter in my fishing adventures, full of possibilities and untold stories waiting to be written. As I sat there, waiting for the first bite, I couldn't help but smile. This was exactly what I had been dreaming of, and it felt even better than I had imagined. The water was calm, the kayak was steady, and the promise of a great day of fishing lay ahead. It was a perfect start, and I couldn't wait to see what the rest of the day, and the future, would bring. The thrill of being out on the water with my new kayak was still fresh as I paddled slowly across the lake, searching for the perfect fishing spot. The sun had fully risen by now, bathing the landscape in a warm, golden light. The air was crisp and clear, with just a slight breeze rippling the surface of the water. Everything felt alive, the birds chirping from the treetops, the occasional splash of fish in the distance, and the soft rustle of leaves as the wind moved through the trees. I felt completely immersed in the moment, my senses attuned to the world around me as I explored this familiar lake from a brand new perspective. One of the first things I noticed as I paddled was just how much more of the lake I could explore with the kayak. From the shore, I had always been limited by how far I could cast and how close I could get to certain spots. But now, with the kayak, those limitations were gone. I could glide silently across the water, getting up close to areas that had always been out of reach. It was like unlocking a new level in a game I had played for years, and the excitement of discovering these hidden gems was palpable. I decided to head towards a part of the lake that I had often eyed from the shore but had never been able to fish. It was a small, secluded cove nestled in a corner of the lake, surrounded by overhanging trees and dense vegetation. From the shore, it had always looked like a prime fishing spot, protected from the wind, with plenty of underwater structure where fish could hide. But the only way to reach it was by boat or kayak, and until now, it had remained out of my grasp. As I approached the cove, I could already tell that this spot was special. The water here was calmer, almost glass-like, reflecting the green of the trees and the blue of the sky above. The overhanging branches created a natural canopy, casting dappled shadows on the water and providing a sense of seclusion and tranquility. It felt like I was entering a hidden sanctuary, a place where the fish were plentiful and the pressures of the outside world simply didn't exist. The kayak allowed me to maneuver with precision, gliding silently into the cove without disturbing the water too much. I could see the potential of this spot immediately. Fallen logs and submerged branches crisscrossed the water, creating perfect cover for fish. The water here was slightly deeper than in other parts of the lake, with a drop-off that I could only see now that I was directly above it. I knew that bass, in particular, liked to hang out in these kinds of areas, ambushing prey from the shadows or retreating to the deeper water when spooked. What made this spot even more special was its inaccessibility. From the shore, this cove was hidden from view by a thick wall of trees and shrubs. Even if you knew it was there, the dense vegetation made it nearly impossible to reach by foot, and the distance from the nearest shoreline meant that few, if any, anglers had fished here before. The sense of exclusivity, of having this prime spot all to myself, made the experience even more thrilling. I anchored the kayak in a strategic position, close enough to the structure to make accurate casts, but far enough away that I wouldn't spook any fish hiding below. The kayak's stability was a game-changer here. Standing up to get a better view of the water, I could clearly see the submerged features that made this spot so promising. I could cast with ease, knowing that I could position myself perfectly to target the fish that were likely hiding in the shadows. As I prepared to cast, I took a moment to appreciate just how much the kayak had transformed my fishing experience. This wasn't just about reaching a new spot, it was about the freedom to explore, to move silently and effortlessly through the water, and to access areas that were virtually untouched. The kayak had opened up a whole new world of possibilities, and this cove, with its perfect blend of structure, depth, and seclusion, was the epitome of what I had been hoping to find. I cast my line towards a fallen log, letting the lure sink slowly into the water. The anticipation was electric. This spot had all the makings of a honey hole, a place where the big fish lurked, waiting for an unsuspecting prey to swim by. I worked the lure slowly, mimicking the movement of a wounded baitfish, and felt a surge of excitement as I imagined the bass lurking in the shadows, eyeing the lure with predatory intent. The kayak allowed me to stay in the perfect position, making it easy to work the entire area without having to constantly reposition myself. I could cast to every likely spot, under the overhanging branches, along the edge of the drop-off, and into the deeper pockets of water. Each cast felt like it was building towards something, the tension rising with every twitch of the lure. As I fished, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what I had been dreaming of, finding the perfect spot, reaching it with ease, and having the freedom to fish it thoroughly and strategically. The kayak had made it all possible, turning what would have been an ordinary fishing trip into something extraordinary. I knew that even if I didn't catch anything today, just being here, in this secluded cove, was worth every penny I had spent. But deep down, I had a feeling that this spot was going to deliver. The combination of structure, depth, and seclusion was too good to pass up. As I cast my line once more, letting the lure sink into the shadows beneath a fallen branch, I felt a surge of anticipation. This was it, the perfect spot, the perfect setup, and the perfect moment. All that was left was to see what the lake had in store for me. As I sat quietly in my kayak, anchored in the secluded cove, the world around me seemed to slow down. The early morning sun was now fully above the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the lake. The water in the cove was still as glass, reflecting the trees and sky above with perfect clarity. It was the kind of morning that makes you feel connected to the world in a way that's hard to describe, like everything is in its right place, and all you have to do is be present and breathe it in. I was in the perfect spot, a place I had only dreamed of reaching before I had the kayak. The overhanging trees and dense vegetation created a natural barrier, muffling any sounds from the rest of the lake and giving me a sense of complete isolation. I could hear the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface, and the distant calls of birds greeting the new day. The tranquility of the moment was almost meditative, the stillness amplifying the anticipation that was building inside me. As I prepared to cast my line, my mind was a swirl of thoughts and emotions. There was the excitement, of course, the thrill of fishing in a spot that I knew had all the makings of a honey hole. But there was also a sense of calm determination. I had done everything right to get to this point, invested in the kayak, found the perfect spot, and positioned myself just so. Now, it was up to me and a bit of luck to see what would happen next. The kayak, with its stability and silence, allowed me to approach the water in a way I had never experienced before. From this vantage point, I could see into the water with remarkable clarity, spotting the subtle changes in depth, the underwater structure, and even the occasional shadow of a fish darting below. The ability to stand up and get a better view made all the difference. I could make more precise casts, targeting specific areas with the confidence that comes from knowing exactly where my lure would land. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment before the cast. There was something magical about the anticipation that builds in the seconds before your line hits the water. It's a mix of hope, focus, and a little bit of faith that you've made the right choice. I could feel my heart beating a little faster, the adrenaline starting to flow as I visualized the lure sinking into the water, mimicking a wounded baitfish or a struggling insect, an irresistible temptation for any fish lurking in the shadows. As I cast my line, I felt the familiar thrill of the lure arcing through the air, the line whistling softly as it sailed towards the target. It landed with a barely audible plop, sending small ripples across the glassy surface. The world seemed to hold its breath as the lure began its slow descent into the depths, disappearing into the shadows beneath a submerged log. I held the rod with a light grip, feeling every twitch and pull as the lure moved through the water. The seconds stretched out, each one thick with anticipation. In my mind, I was already playing out the possible scenarios, imagining the sudden, electrifying strike, the rod bending under the weight of a big fish, the rush of adrenaline as I set the hook and the battle began. But there was also the uncertainty, the knowledge that fishing is as much about patience and persistence as it is about skill. Would this cast be the one? Would the fish take the bait, or would it slip away unnoticed, leaving me to try again? The surroundings added to the intensity of the moment. The stillness of the water, the quiet rustle of the trees, and the occasional ripple as fish moved beneath the surface, all of it heightened my senses, making me acutely aware of every detail. The kayak's gentle bobbing on the water was a reminder of the delicate balance between man and nature, the thin line between success and failure in the art of fishing. Being so close to the water, so connected to the environment, made the anticipation even more potent. I worked the lure slowly, pausing now and then to let it drift naturally, imitating the movements of a vulnerable prey item. Each twitch of the rod was deliberate, each movement calculated to provoke a response. I could feel the tension building in my muscles, the slight tremor of excitement as I waited for that telltale tug on the line. The kayak remained steady beneath me, a solid platform that allowed me to focus entirely on the task at hand, without the distractions or limitations of shore fishing. The minutes ticked by, each one adding to the anticipation. I cast again and again, working the area thoroughly, convinced that a big one was lurking just below the surface. The quiet, the solitude, the sense of being completely alone with my thoughts and the water, it all amplified the experience, turning each cast into a moment of pure concentration and hope. There was no rush, no hurry to move on or try something different. I was exactly where I needed to be, and I knew that if I was patient, the payoff would come. As I continued to fish, the anticipation never waned. Every cast felt like it could be the one, every moment a potential turning point. The kayak had given me access to this special spot, and now it was up to me to make the most of it. The surroundings, the silence, and the focus all came together to create an experience that was as much about the journey as it was about the catch. This was what I had been waiting for, the chance to push my limits, to test my skills, and to experience the thrill of fishing in its purest form. And then, just when I was beginning to think that the fish might be playing hard to get, it happened. A sudden, sharp tug on the line, followed by the unmistakable pull of a big fish trying to escape. My heart leaped into my throat as the rod bent under the weight, the adrenaline kicking in as I set the hook and the battle began. The anticipation had finally paid off, and in that instant, everything else faded away. It was just me, the fish, and the water, and the thrill of the chase. The moment the fish hit the lure, time seemed to stand still. I felt a sharp, unmistakable tug on the line, followed by a powerful pull that made my heart leap into my throat. This wasn't just any fish. I could tell immediately that it was something big, something that was going to put up a serious fight. The rod bent sharply under the strain, and the line zipped through the water as the fish tried to make a run for it. The adrenaline surged through my veins, and in that split second, everything else faded away. It was just me, the fish, and the water. My first instinct was to set the hook, and I did so with a quick, firm snap of the rod. The fish responded with a burst of energy, pulling hard and darting towards deeper water. The kayak rocked slightly with the force of the fish's initial run, but it held steady, giving me the confidence I needed to focus entirely on the fight. I tightened my grip on the rod and began to reel in, feeling the immense power of the fish on the other end. This was what I had been hoping for. This was the moment that would make all the preparation, all the anticipation, worth it. The kayak performed flawlessly as the battle began in earnest. Its stability was a game-changer, allowing me to stay balanced and in control even as the fish made a series of powerful runs. Each time the fish surged forward, I let it take some line, not wanting to risk a break. The drag on my reel hummed as the fish tested the limits of my tackle, but the kayak remained a steady platform beneath me, allowing me to maintain a strong position without feeling like I might tip over. The ability to move and adjust my angle was crucial. I could lean into the fight, shift my weight, and follow the fish's movements without ever feeling unstable. As the fish continued to fight, I felt a mix of emotions coursing through me. There was the exhilaration, of course, the thrill of hooking into something big, something that tested my skills and my gear to the fullest. But there was also a deep sense of focus, a kind of tunnel vision where nothing else mattered but the task at hand. Every second was filled with intense concentration as I worked to keep the fish on the line, adjusting the tension, reeling in when I could, and letting the fish run when it needed to. The battle was a dance, a back-and-forth struggle where every move mattered. The fish was relentless, and the fight felt like it stretched on forever. Each time I thought I was gaining the upper hand, the fish would make another powerful run, pulling line and diving deep. My arms were starting to burn from the effort, but I wasn't about to give up. I could feel the kayak moving slightly with each pull, but it always returned to center, providing a stable base from which to fight. The confidence that came from knowing the kayak could handle this kind of action allowed me to focus entirely on the fish, without worrying about my balance or position. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if the fish would win this battle. But with each passing second, I became more determined. I had hooked something special, something that was putting up the kind of fight that anglers dream of, and I wasn't about to let it get away. The struggle was intense, every movement of the fish transmitting through the rod and into my hands like an electric current. I could feel its power, its desperation to escape, and it only fueled my resolve to bring it in. The surrounding environment seemed to amplify the intensity of the moment. The cove, so quiet and serene just moments before, was now filled with the sounds of the battle, the whirring of the reel, the splashing of water as the fish broke the surface, and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The water, once still and calm, was now alive with action, rippling and churning as the fish fought against the line. The kayak, which had allowed me to reach this secluded spot, was now proving its worth in the heat of the struggle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I started to gain the upper hand. The fish was tiring, its runs becoming shorter, its resistance beginning to wane. I took advantage of the moment, reeling in with steady, deliberate motions, careful not to rush but determined to bring this fight to a close. The kayak stability allowed me to stand up for a better view, and as I did, I caught my first real glimpse of the fish as it neared the surface. My breath caught in my throat. It was huge, far bigger than anything I had expected to catch that day. With one final effort, I brought the fish to the surface, guiding it towards the kayak with my rod tip high. The fish thrashed weakly, its energy nearly spent, and I quickly reached for the net. My hands were shaking with excitement as I scooped it up, the weight of the fish almost surprising me. As I lifted it out of the water, I couldn't help but let out a whoop of triumph. This was a true monster, a trophy catch that would be the highlight of any angler's season. The emotions flooded in all at once: relief, joy, pride, and a deep sense of satisfaction. I had done it. I had hooked and landed a fish that would be the envy of any angler, and I had done it from the kayak that I had invested so much in. As I held the fish in my hands, its massive size and powerful body a testament to the struggle we had both endured, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. This was the moment I had dreamed of when I first decided to buy the kayak, and it had surpassed all my expectations. As I admired the fish, taking in its size and strength, I felt a deep connection to the water, to the sport, and to the experience. The struggle had been intense, but it had also been rewarding in a way that only a true angler can understand. The kayak had performed beyond my wildest hopes, proving to be the perfect partner in this epic battle. It had given me the freedom to explore, the stability to fight, and the platform to land this incredible catch. After taking a few quick photos to capture the moment, I gently released the fish back into the water, watching as it swam away, disappearing into the depths. I sat back down in the kayak, my heart still racing, my hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The struggle was over, but the memory of it would stay with me forever. This was what fishing was all about: the thrill of the catch, the connection to nature, and the satisfaction of overcoming a challenge. And I knew, without a doubt, that the investment in the kayak had been worth every penny. As I sat there in the kayak, holding the monster fish in my hands, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. The battle had been fierce, the struggle intense, but now, in this moment of triumph, all the effort had paid off. The weight of the fish was substantial, its thick body glistening in the morning sunlight. I could feel the power in its muscles as it wriggled slightly, still trying to break free even after the fight had ended. This was no ordinary catch. This was the kind of fish that anglers dream of, the kind of fish that becomes a legend among fishing buddies. The first thing that struck me as I held the fish was its sheer size. It was far bigger than I had imagined when I felt that initial tug on the line. Seeing it up close, feeling the heft of its body, I realized just how impressive this catch was. The fish was a true trophy, its scales shimmering with shades of green and gold, its mouth wide and powerful, capable of snapping up anything that came too close. I had caught big fish before, but this one was on a different level. This was a monster. The excitement of the moment was almost overwhelming. My heart was still racing from the battle, and my hands shook slightly as I held the fish, feeling the reality of the catch set in. This was what I had been working towards, what I had invested in the kayak for, a chance to land something truly extraordinary. The kayak had allowed me to reach this secluded spot, to position myself perfectly for the cast, and to fight the fish with the stability and control I needed to bring it in. And now, here it was, in my hands, a testament to the success of the entire endeavor. The reality of the catch surpassed even my wildest expectations. When I had imagined this moment, I had pictured something impressive, sure, but this fish was beyond what I had dared to hope for. The size, the strength, the sheer beauty of the creature, it was all more than I could have asked for. The satisfaction of knowing that I had done everything right, from choosing the right spot to making the perfect cast to fighting the fish with skill and patience, was immense. This was the culmination of all the preparation, all the anticipation, and it felt incredible. Holding the fish, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. This was a catch that any angler would be proud of, a fish that would be the highlight of any fishing season. But it was more than just the size of the fish that made this moment special, it was everything that had led up to it. The decision to invest in the kayak, the hours spent researching and setting it up, the early morning paddle across the lake, and the careful selection of the perfect fishing spot. All of it had come together in this one triumphant moment, and it felt like a validation of everything I had done. The emotions were complex, a mix of joy, relief, pride, and a deep connection to the experience. This was why I fished, why I had spent so many hours on the water, why I had invested in the kayak. It wasn't just about catching fish, it was about moments like this, moments that made you feel alive, that made you feel like you were part of something bigger than yourself. The connection to the water, to nature, and to the fish itself was profound. I felt a deep respect for the creature in my hands, for the challenge it had presented, and for the experience we had shared. After a few moments of admiring the fish, I knew it was time to release it back into the water. Carefully, I lowered it over the side of the kayak, feeling the cool water against my hands as the fish began to revive. I held it gently, waiting until I felt the powerful muscles start to twitch again, a sign that it was ready to swim away. As I released it, I watched as it disappeared into the depths, a final flash of its tail the only sign that it had ever been there. As the fish swam away, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The triumph wasn't just in the catch itself, but in everything that had led up to it, the preparation, the anticipation, the struggle, and finally, the victory. The reality of the catch had not only met but exceeded my expectations, and the satisfaction I felt was immeasurable. I had set out to challenge myself, to push the limits of what I could achieve as an angler, and I had succeeded in a way that I hadn't even fully imagined. I sat back in the kayak, letting the excitement of the moment wash over me. The lake was quiet again, the water calm, as if it, too, was settling back into a peaceful rhythm after the chaos of the fight. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension leave my body, replaced by a deep sense of contentment. This was why I had invested in the kayak, this was the reward I had been hoping for. As I paddled back towards the shore, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. The kayak had proven to be worth every penny, not just for the catch itself, but for the entire experience. It had opened up new possibilities, allowed me to explore new waters, and given me the tools I needed to succeed in a way I never could have before. The triumph of landing that monster fish was the culmination of all of that, a moment that I would remember for the rest of my life. Back on shore, as I packed up my gear and loaded the kayak onto the car, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The excitement of the catch still lingered, but it was tempered by a sense of peace and fulfillment. I had done what I had set out to do, and the reality of the experience had exceeded all my expectations. The triumph was complete, and I knew that this was just the beginning of many more adventures to come. The kayak had already proven itself to be one of the best investments I had ever made, and I couldn't wait to see what other triumphs the future would bring. As I drove home with the kayak securely strapped to the roof of my car, the thrill of the morning's catch still buzzing in my veins, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. The decision to invest in an $890 angling kayak had been a big one that had required careful thought, research, and a leap of faith. Now, with the memory of that monster fish fresh in my mind, I felt an overwhelming sense of validation. Every doubt I'd had, every second of hesitation, had been washed away by the experience of the day. The kayak had proven itself in every way imaginable. From the moment I launched it onto the water, it had delivered on its promise, transforming my fishing experience and opening up a world of new possibilities. The stability it provided during the fight with the big fish was nothing short of remarkable. Not once did I feel off balance or unsure of my footing. I had been able to stand, cast, and reel in with complete confidence, something that would have been nearly impossible from the shore or a less stable vessel. That alone made the investment worth it. But it wasn't just about the stability or the successful catch. The kayak had given me something more, something that was harder to quantify but just as important. It had reignited my passion for fishing, turning a familiar hobby into an adventure again. The freedom to explore new parts of the lake, to reach spots that had been inaccessible before, had added a layer of excitement that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about catching fish, it was about the journey, the exploration, and the sense of discovery that came with each outing. As I thought back on the day's events, I realized that the kayak had delivered an experience that far exceeded my expectations. I had bought it with the hope of improving my fishing, but it had done much more than that. It had changed the way I approached the sport, giving me a new perspective and a renewed sense of enthusiasm. The ability to glide silently across the water, to position myself perfectly for each cast, and to fight fish from a stable, comfortable platform had transformed the entire experience. It wasn't just about reaching new spots, it was about fishing smarter, more effectively, and with greater satisfaction. The investment in the kayak had been significant, but as I reflected on the day, I knew it had been worth every penny. The kayak had already proven itself to be a game changer, and I hadn't even scratched the surface of its potential. There were so many more lakes, rivers, and coastal waters to explore, so many more fish to catch, and so many more adventures to embark on. The possibilities felt endless, and that sense of anticipation, of looking forward to the next trip, was something that money couldn't buy. I also found myself thinking about the long-term benefits of the investment. The kayak wasn't just a one-time purchase, it was a tool that I would use for years to come, each trip building on the last, each experience adding to the value of the investment. The memories I would create, the fish I would catch, and the places I would explore, all of it would be a return on the investment I had made. And as I considered that, the price tag seemed less and less significant. What mattered was the joy, the satisfaction, and the sense of accomplishment that the kayak had already brought me. As I pulled into my driveway and began to unload the kayak, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I was grateful for the decision I had made, for the research and the careful thought that had gone into choosing the right kayak, and for the incredible experience it had already given me. I knew that this was just the beginning, that there were many more triumphs and adventures ahead, and that the kayak would continue to prove its worth with each outing. In that moment, any lingering doubts about the investment vanished completely. The kayak had been worth every dollar and more, not just because of the fish I had caught, but because of the way it had transformed my relationship with the sport I loved. It had given me a new sense of purpose, a new challenge, and a new way to connect with the water and the world around me. The experience of the day had validated the decision in every possible way, and I knew that this was an investment that would continue to pay dividends for years to come. As I stored the kayak in the garage, ready for its next adventure, I couldn't help but feel excited about the future. The investment had been more than just a financial one, it had been an investment in myself, in my happiness, and in the joy of fishing. And as I closed the garage door, I knew that I had made the right choice. The kayak was more than just a piece of equipment, it was a gateway to new experiences, new challenges, and new triumphs, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me next. After getting home and storing the kayak, I couldn't wait to share the story of my big catch. The excitement was still fresh, and I knew that this was a tale worth telling. Fishing stories are a time-honored tradition, and there's something special about reliving the experience through the eyes of others. I could already imagine the reactions of my friends, fellow anglers, and the online fishing community. This wasn't just any fishing story, this was a story of triumph, a story of taking a risk, and a story of reaping the rewards of that risk. The first person I called was my best friend, Mark, who had been fishing with me more times than I could count. As soon as he picked up, I launched into the story, barely able to contain my excitement. I described the early morning paddle, the serene cove I had discovered, and the heart-pounding moment when the monster fish hit my line. I could hear the surprise and excitement in his voice as I recounted the battle, the fish's powerful runs, the strength of the fight, and the way the kayak had performed flawlessly under the pressure. Mark knew how much this kayak meant to me, and hearing the triumph in my voice, he could tell that the investment had paid off in spades. "Man, that's incredible!" Mark exclaimed. "I knew you were going to catch something big, but that's next level." "I can't believe it. How big was it?" I chuckled, already feeling a sense of pride swelling up inside me. "It was massive, Mark. Easily the biggest fish I've ever caught." The fight was intense, but the kayak held steady the whole time. It was everything I hoped it would be. As I shared more details, I could hear Mark's genuine admiration. He asked about the kayak's stability, how it felt to stand and fight the fish, and what the whole experience was like. It felt great to recount the adventure, to relive the emotions of the day, and to know that my friend was just as excited for me as I had been in the moment. Mark had been with me on plenty of fishing trips, and he understood the significance of this catch, not just the size of the fish, but what it represented in terms of the investment I had made. Later that evening, I decided to share the story online. I posted a photo of the big fish, still glowing in the golden morning light, on my favorite fishing forum. Along with the photo, I wrote a detailed account of the day, starting with the decision to buy the kayak, the excitement of the first launch, and the discovery of the perfect fishing spot. I described the anticipation before the big catch, the struggle during the fight, and the ultimate triumph of landing the fish. I wanted to convey not just the physical experience, but also the emotions, the satisfaction, and the validation of making the right choice. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Comments began pouring in, with fellow anglers congratulating me on the catch and asking for details about the kayak. Some people shared similar experiences, recounting their own stories of investing in new gear and how it had transformed their fishing adventures. Others wanted to know more about the kayak itself, how it handled, what features it had, and whether I thought it was worth the price. "Awesome catch, man. That's a beast," one comment read. "Looks like that kayak is paying off already. Congrats on the monster. Sounds like the perfect day on the water. What model is that kayak? I've been thinking about getting one myself." The excitement of the online community only added to the thrill of the day. Sharing the story with people who understood the significance, who knew what it meant to catch a fish like that, made the experience even more satisfying. It wasn't just about the validation of the catch, it was about connecting with others who shared my passion, who could appreciate the adventure and the triumph that came with it. As I replied to comments and answered questions, I realized just how much the kayak had already changed my fishing life. The decision to invest in it had been a leap of faith, but now, after sharing the story and seeing the reactions, I knew it had been the right choice. The excitement and admiration from others confirmed what I had already felt, that this was a moment to remember, a highlight of my fishing journey, and a story that I would tell for years to come. The experience of recounting the adventure was almost as enjoyable as the catch itself. Every time I shared the story, whether with friends, family, or online, I relived the excitement, the anticipation, and the sense of accomplishment. It was a reminder of why I loved fishing, why I had taken the leap to buy the kayak, and why the investment had been worth it. Reflecting on the day and the responses I received, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The kayak wasn't just a purchase, it was a catalyst for new experiences, new stories, and new connections. It had already given me so much more than I had expected, and I knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more trips, more fish, and more stories to share. But for now, I was content to bask in the glow of this triumph, to enjoy the moment, and to know that I had made the right choice in every way. As I sat back and reflected on the events of the day, the satisfaction of my recent triumph began to evolve into something more, a sense of anticipation for the future. The excitement of landing that monster fish had reignited a spark within me, a passion for angling that felt fresh and invigorating. The purchase of the kayak had opened up a world of possibilities, and as I thought about what lay ahead, I felt a surge of energy and excitement that I hadn't experienced in a long time. This kayak was more than just a piece of equipment, it was a gateway to new adventures. Already, I could feel my mind racing with ideas for future trips, new waters to explore, and bigger challenges to tackle. The thought of returning to the same lake where I had caught the big one was tempting, but now, with the kayak at my disposal, the possibilities were endless. I no longer felt confined to the familiar spots I had fished from the shore. With the kayak, I could explore distant lakes, winding rivers, and even coastal areas that had always been out of reach. One of the first trips I planned was to a larger, more remote lake that I had always dreamed of fishing but had never had the means to fully explore. It was known for its crystal-clear waters, hidden coves, and abundant fish populations. With the kayak, I would be able to reach the most secluded spots, where the big fish were rumored to lurk. The idea of spending an entire day paddling from cove to cove, casting into untouched waters, filled me with a sense of adventure that was almost intoxicating. The anticipation of what I might find, new species, bigger fish, or simply the joy of solitude on the water, was enough to keep me planning for hours. Another adventure I had in mind was to try my hand at river fishing. There was a winding river not far from where I lived that flowed through dense forests and rugged terrain, making it difficult to access by foot. The kayak, however, would allow me to navigate the twists and turns of the river, to find those deep pools and eddies where fish like to hide. The thought of drifting down the river, casting into shaded areas beneath overhanging branches, was thrilling. It was a new challenge, a new way of fishing that would test my skills in different ways, and I was eager to embrace it. And then there was the coast. Saltwater fishing had always been something I wanted to try but had never taken the plunge. The kayak opened up that possibility as well. I imagined launching from a quiet beach, paddling out to nearshore reefs, and casting for species I had only seen in magazines. The challenge of learning new techniques, understanding tides, and navigating coastal waters was daunting but exciting. It was a chance to expand my horizons, to push myself beyond my comfort zone, and to experience the thrill of catching new and unfamiliar fish. This purchase had changed my approach to angling in profound ways. Before, I had been content to fish the same spots, using the same methods, hoping for incremental improvements in my results. But now, with the kayak, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a drive to explore, to learn, and to push the boundaries of what I could achieve as an angler. The kayak had given me the tools to take control of my fishing experience, to go where the fish were, and to engage with the sport in a more dynamic and fulfilling way. The excitement I felt for the future was palpable. Every time I thought about taking the kayak out on a new adventure, I felt a rush of anticipation. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, learning new waters, adapting to different conditions, and refining my techniques, but that was part of the thrill. The kayak had transformed fishing from a simple pastime into a full-fledged adventure, and I was eager to see where it would take me next. Looking forward, I knew that the kayak would be a constant companion on my fishing journeys. It had already proven its worth, not just in the fish I had caught, but in the way it had changed my perspective on the sport. I was no longer just a shorebound angler, limited by distance and access. I was an explorer, a hunter, someone who could go wherever the water led me. The kayak had given me the freedom to pursue my passion with a new level of intensity and joy. As I closed my eyes that night, drifting off to sleep, my mind was filled with images of future fishing trips, sunrises over new lakes, the sound of water lapping against the kayak's hull, and the thrill of hooking into something big and wild. The purchase had been an investment in more than just a kayak. It had been an investment in countless future adventures, in the stories I would tell, and in the memories I would create. The excitement for what lay ahead was undeniable, and I knew that, with my kayak by my side, the best was yet to come. This is where the story ends. Share your opinion in the comments. Did you like the story?